Hello, Marcy and the Maverick family. I'm glad you can join me today for a little cooking class. Today we're going to be making an apple pie. First, we'll start with the crust. I used the crust recipe that my Nana gave to me many years ago. And it's pretty basic. It doesn't have butter in it or anything. It's just a basic crust. But that's what I like, and that is what seems to work for me in my pies. I've already measured out my ingredients, so I've got flour in here, just all-purpose flour, nothing special. Then I'm using salt. I'm going to put a teaspoon of salt. And then I'm going to put shortening in. I like to use Crisco shortening. Don't buy any cheap brand of shortening because it tastes like crap. Always spend big bucks, get the Crisco. My Nana's recipe used to use lard, and lard's kind of a gross thing, and I don't think they have it everywhere, but the Crisco is pretty much just as good. So I'm going to put my shortening in there. And then here's a tool you need to have. If you don't have one, it's worth going out to Walmart or wherever and buying this. This is called a pastry cutter. The only thing it's good for is to cut up pastry dough. Now you can use two knives together. People tell you, oh, just use two knives, but it's a pain in the neck. Spend a couple bucks, buy the pastry cutter. So I'm going to just chop it up in here and put it in on the bowl. All right, I'm just about done here. It didn't take 3 minutes, maybe 2 minutes, something like that. And you're going to keep cutting it up until the little balls of shortening that are coated with flour are not bigger than a pea size. That's probably fine if they're that big. At times when you're cutting it up, some of the shortening and flour may go on the pastry cutter, but you just kind of wipe it off and just keep going again. So it's ready to go. That's all that's in it except for cold water. Get some cold water. I'm going to, because I know making here, I almost always need to add another tablespoon or so, I'm going to dump all of this water in there at once. What I want you to do, though, is to use a little bit less water, dump it up, mix it up, and then if you need more, add to it. The reason I say that is we're at a high altitude, and typically we use more water in things than you might. So I'm going to just dump all this on there real quick, but I'm not going to dump it and let it sit. I'm going to dump it. Then I'm going to move it around with a fork. An important thing in pie crust and in any baked goods other than yeast breads, because with yeast you can just mix it up forever and ever, and that only makes it better. But if you're making any kind of pastry or a recipe that does not use yeast, that's just got butter or shortening or something in, don't mess with it too much. That is just so important. So I'm mixing it up till it's just about mixed. I can kind of see if I mix it up with my fingers, kind of looking flaky. Then I'm going to take it and I'm going to smush it up just a little bit with my hands, not a lot. Now this probably looks like a lot of dough to you, and it actually is. It's enough dough for 2 double crust pies or 4 single crust pies, like a pumpkin pie. I made too much because I thought if I cut too many apples, I can use the extra and make a little pie for my neighbors. Well, I've got it all mixed in this bowl pretty well, but if it didn't mix up well, then I would put it out on the counter and just try to mix it a little bit. I might add 1 tablespoon of water, cold water, at a time until it was all mixed up, but no more mixed than this. Do not mess with it too much. Do not mess with the dough. Do you hear me? Anyway, I have enough dough here to make 2 double crust pies or 4 pies like pumpkin pies with 1 crust. And I just made a little extra just in case I have some extra apples cut up. So I'm going to take this dough now and I'm going to put it back in the bowl. And I'm going to cover it up with saran wrap. And I'm going to put it in the refrigerator for a half hour while I get my apples ready. You don't have to chill it right away, but it kind of makes it easier to work with. It's not so mushy, particularly if you are in a warm kitchen. So I'm going to stick it in the refrigerator for just a half hour. I like to use Gala apples for apple pie. See this sticker on here? Make sure to remove it before you put it in the pie. I've got my Gala apples here. I have about 5 pounds of apples. That's probably overkill for the pie crust, but I'd rather have too many than too few. I am in luck because I have a handy dandy apple corer and peeler. I'm not into gadgets, but this is one I just had to have. You don't need to have one. Of course, you can cut them by hand. So you need to core and peel the apples. I'm just going to show you how this little gadget works. You take the apple, the big end, and you put it on there. And then you kind of hold this down here. And roll it around. Sweet! And it takes the core out and it slices it into one big thing. And then I take a knife and cut it in half so I've got little apple halves. I'm going to do that with the rest of my apples. And then I'm going to take, even before the apples are done, I'm going to take a little bit of lemon juice and I'm going to put it on the apples. And that's going to keep them from browning, so if it takes me a long time, or if your Uncle Rano distracts me, the apples won't go brown in the meantime. I've got the apples all cut up. I must say the apple peeler was not cooperative today, so you really don't need an apple peeler for just 1 or 2 pies, but if you are making hundreds of pies, perhaps it's a good thing. So I added a little bit more lemon juice to here. So in all, you're going to add maybe a couple tablespoons of lemon juice. Then we're going to put some flour in. And this I don't really have a measurement for. I kind of sprinkle, I probably have about 1/4 of a cup of flour on there. And I'm going to mix it up a little bit so it kind of looks like it's coated. The flour helps to thicken the apples. They need that in there. I'm going to add maybe a little bit more. So I guess I would start with maybe 1/3 of a cup of flour and put it on there on my 5 pounds of apples. And I realized when I was cutting the apples, another reason you need to start with a whole lot of apples, because while you're cutting them, you're going to be eating a lot of them. So you really want to start with a lot. So I got that. And the sugar, I'm going to start with about 1/3 of a cup of sugar. And that's, it just varies as to what you like and how sweet your apples are. So that's why you can't really say, oh, I need to have this much sugar in here. So I'm going to mix it up. I got a seed in there. I'll pull that out. And then I'm going to taste and see if it tastes like they're sweet enough. It tastes really good to me. I'm gonna go with it. Then I'm gonna put some cinnamon in there. And again, you can put as much cinnamon as you like. I was reading about apple pies recently and they said, don't be tempted to put other kinds of spices in here. Just put cinnamon. That's all it really needs. And I think that that's true. No, Maverick, we will not put oregano in the pie crust. Cinnamon only. So I've got it all mixed up. I think it looks pretty good. I'm gonna put just a little bit more in there. Got to get rid of that oregano so I don't accidentally put it in. So the filling is ready to go. Now I'm going to roll out the crust. I've taken the dough out of the refrigerator. Looks good. And I have some sheets of parchment paper that I'm going to roll it out. I don't want to add any more flour. Do not add more flour to the dough because that will make it kind of tough. I'm going to take about 1/4 of this and then I'm going to roll it out into a circle. I'm going to kind of ball it up a little bit, smush it down a little bit. And put the other piece on top. That's the advantage of having the parchment paper. You don't have to add flour then. You can probably use wax paper. I've tried it with plastic wrap, but that kind of sticks a little bit. So, but you could use that if you absolutely didn't have anything else. Roll it out a little bit. I sometimes have a tendency to make my crusts too thick, so I have to really smush down on it so I don't. I'm pulling it over because sometimes it gets all funky looking on there, and this will smooth it out a little bit. All right, there we go. I'm going to roll that to be a little bit bigger than my pie plate. This is the pie plate I'm using. It looks big, but it's not. It's the same size as a regular pie plate. I just like it because it's pretty. I'm going to go just a little bit more. We can always patch it together if we need to. There's a lot of forgiveness in this. I'm going to take this then and take my bottom part and pull that off. That's nice there. Look at that. Ooh, this is going to be good. Okay, then I'll set that aside, and we'll have some scraps to use with that, so not to worry about that little edge. It's not quite long enough to crimp. Then I'm going to take another 1/4 of a batch of my dough, and this is for the top, and it doesn't really need to be quite as big as the one on the bottom, but if it is, that's okay. You can take those leftover scraps. My mother used to do this when I was growing up. And you can, when you're all done, take the leftover scraps and roll it out really thin. Get some melted butter. Marcy, you'll like that. And brush it on that. Cover the whole thing. And then put lots of cinnamon and some sugar on there. Roll it up. And then cut it in little pinwheels. And you bake them in the oven. And then your kids or you can snack on those. Okay, I'm going to roll out this top one. I can use the same parchment paper. I've got the top crust all done. I'm going to just take that off, and then we will put our apples, and by then there's a little bit of juice, and that can go in there, and we're going to dump that into the crust. Okay, and we're just going to keep on dumping it till it's way too big. We're going to dump it until it is huge. You want to make sure that the edges have apples filled in, so there aren't any big holes in it. Of course, it's going to cook and settle a little bit, but we don't want to give it the chance to settle too much. And as you can see, I've probably got about a good 1.5 pounds of apples left in the pan, in my bowl. So probably if you use 4 pounds of apples, that's probably a really safe number. See, it's kind of nice and mounded. All right, and then I'm going to take my top crust. Before I take the top crust, I need to make some vents for it. It's easier to make them now. Now what you can do is you can take a knife and you can cut a little slit in it, or you can put a big M on it, which is nice. Sometimes what I like to do is just take one of those little cookie cutters, and it'll make it kind of decorative. And this is a fall leaf cutter. And then I'm going to take it and lift it up, and those things will come out. What I should have done was refrigerated this after I formed it. That way it wouldn't be a little misshapen. The reason you need the vents is you need somewhere for all the steam that is in the pie to escape. If you don't have that, then it's not going to cook properly. So I've got it all on there. Then I'm going to take some scissors and I'm going to cut it. So here's the edge of my pie right there. I'm going to cut so I'm like pretty much close to the edge. The easiest kind of edge to do is just to take this fork and smush it down so that your edges are connected. And you do that if you're, oh, I'm tired of working on this pie. I just want to get it done. I'm going to just do that. So I'm going to do that all the way around the edge. I just noticed after I put the top on this that there's kind of a hole there with no apples in. So I'm going to take that little hole and I'm going to just shove some apples in there so we don't risk it. And no, we are not adding dill weed to the pie. Do not add anything to the pie but the cinnamon, 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 cinnamon. So I've got this little hole filled in, and then I'm going to take, and it's almost ready to bake, one more step. You're going to take some milk, and you can use regular milk or you can use cream, but I've also found I can just use almond milk or soy milk or whatever I have hanging around. I had some almond milk here. And I'm going to take it and I'm going to, you can use a pastry brush too, but I just usually just use my hand. And then you kind of rub it on there. And then I'm going to take my little cutouts that I got, that are the leaves, and I'm going to kind of stick them offside. So I've still got my vents, but I've got these little leaves on the top that look really, really nice and cool. So I'm going to put those on. I wanted to put the milk on first because that helps the leaves to stick to the pie. So I'm going to put those on there. Then I'll put a little bit more milk where the leaves are. And I'm just going to take some sugar. Any kind of sugar is fine. And I'm going to just sprinkle it on the top. And that'll make a really, really nice crust. Now, what I didn't tell you at the beginning was to preheat your oven. I've already got my oven preheating. And at regular altitude, we will not put olive oil in the apple pie. No, no olive oil. Cinnamon, lemon juice, that's it. So I've got my oven preheating. I set it at 475, and you'll set it at 450. And then we're going to bake it for a half hour at that temperature. After that time, it's going to have browned up just a little bit, and then I'm going to lower the temperature to 350. And then at that time, I'll take a sheet of aluminum foil and I'm going to put it in the bottom rack of the oven. This is going to bake in the middle rack. And the reason I do that is sometimes when this apple pie starts to cook a little bit, it's going to ooze out and it's going to go on the bottom of the oven. So let's put that sheet of foil on there and it'll catch that. But when you get the recipe with this, it'll give you the temperature. So don't worry about remembering the temperatures. That's why I didn't give you the ingredients. So I'm going to go put this in the oven at a high temperature. We will bake it for a certain amount of time, and then we will lower the temperature and bake it for an hour afterwards. We'll come back when we're ready to check the pie. Even though it's only been 25 minutes, the crust is cooked. This came really brown. So I'm going to just put some foil on it. It's not going to hurt at all. It's still going to cook. But you can see it's not done at all. So remember how I said we would start it with a higher temperature to start with? That higher temperature is just to get it brown and to kind of get it going a little bit. So I'm going to lower the temperature. You'll lower yours to, I'm going to put mine on 350. And then I'm going to, no more spices, no more spices, no pepper. Cinnamon, lemon juice, that's it. And I'm going to put this back in here. And I'm going to set the timer for another half hour, and then I'll check it. And I'll keep checking it, and we'll look at it in a little bit. Also, this is the time I want to put a piece of foil on the bottom shelf, so when the pie, the juices from the pie come out, they'll go on the foil. Set that on there. You could put a pan on there, but then you'd have to clean the pan. If you don't want to waste the foil, you could put a pan on. Well, timer just went off. So it's baked another 30 minutes. I'm going to look and see how we did. Well, I don't see any juices dripped in the bottom of it, and I like to see the juices. That means it's cooked. So I'm going to take this lid off, and ooh, see that? Oh, you can see, if you get closer, you can see some of those juices starting to bubble out of that. Oh man, that makes me salivate. That is so nice. Now I'm going to put a fork in there and see how soft my apples are. They are soft, but they are not quite as soft as I like them. I like them really, really soft. I'm also going to check, I have a smaller pie there, which may be done because it doesn't have as much stuff in it. So I'm going to check that one too. Ooh, nice. I'm going to give this one 5 more minutes. It's almost done. But I want this to cook a little bit more, so I'm going to give that about 10 minutes. I'm going to have 5 minutes, pull this out, and then check this again after 10 minutes. No, not yet. Put the plate away. Put the fork away, Maverick. Soon, soon. Well, the timer just went off, and I had already taken the small pie out. Let's look at this and see what we got going here. Ooh. Look in there. You can see the juices bubbling in there. Ooh, that's so nice. I'm gonna put my fork in there. It is so soft. That is great. Okay, I say it's done. I'm gonna take it out, and it's supposed to sit about a couple hours before you eat it, but that's not really a possible thing to do. So we're gonna let it cool for a little bit and probably cut it up. We've already taken our little sample one out. Too bad our neighbors won't get a piece of it because we've already eaten half of it, and we'll continue to do so. But we'll let you know how the big one turns out. Looks kind of nice, doesn't it? Look at those juices dripping on there. And even the little brown parts, they don't look bad to me. I think it looks very colorful, like fall.